this is what I wanted to bounce off you, is that clearly Merrick Garland wants to be the anti-Bill Barr. He wants to restore the norms to the Justice Department, to a sense of normalcy. But is that the right response for the moment we're in right now? If democracy really does face this existential challenge, is Merrick Garland the right man for the moment? What do you think, Ben Wittes?
Well, so look, Merrick is a friend whom I've, known since before he was on the bench and when I was a very young reporter. So I'm perhaps not the most dispassionate person on this subject, but I would say let's break out a few questions here. On two of them, I'm going to be defensive of Garland, and on one of them, I do think there's some significant criticism that is warranted. It's interestingly not the criticism people are making. So first of all, are they being aggressive enough with respect to the 1-6 prosecutions? They've indicted almost 700 people. Those numbers keep going up. The cases they're bringing, a lot of them are very serious. And the cases that they have pled out or allowed to plead out tend to be the least serious, so they get resolved first. But the Justice Department and the FBI has done amazing work in this far-flung hundreds of potential defendant investigation. We've been covering a fair bit of it on Lawfare, and I urge people to take a look at a recent piece by Roger Parloff that kind of does a little bit of the demographics of these cases. The numbers have gotten more extreme since Roger did that piece. So I would say on the 1-6 stuff, the reasonable question is not whether the Justice Department, should be being more energetic in prosecuting 1-6 people. It's really limited to, are there crimes by political or government echelon people? If you're a Capitol Hill rioter type, insurrectionist, you're probably under indictment. So the question really becomes accountability for people who are not rioters themselves, but may have stoked it. Ultimately, Trump himself, of course. But and there, I think people are assuming a crime and then demanding and then criticizing the Justice Department for not prosecuting those crimes. I don't know that any member of Congress committed a crime. I don't know that Donald Trump committed a crime. It is possible, to encourage people to come to Washington, give incendiary speeches, and earnestly hope that activity will produce violence and not violate the law.
Yeah.
And so would I love to see some indictments among government, White House members of Congress? Yes, I think that would be healthy. Am I confident that the evidence actually supports it? No, not at all. And so I think, I understand people are frustrated, but, the frustration there may be a frustration with the scope of First Amendment protection rather than with the Justice Department. Two more points. There's a second category of cases, which is all the things that people think Donald Trump should be indicted for, Mueller stuff, all kinds of other things that came up over the course of the administration. We don't know what the Justice Department is or isn't doing, what thought has been gone into revisiting, reopening some of those cases. I think it is very possible that Garland and company, and we should include Lisa Monaco in this, and have made a decision that they are going to follow the regular order in all respects. And that means you don't reopen matters simply because a prior administration, because you think that these people must be corrupt. It's not really the way the Justice Department works. I think we have to have an open mind about what they're doing. And by the way, if they were actively investigating stuff, it would take forever. So we wouldn't necessarily know. Here's the area in which I think
Hmm.
Merrick actually deserves some criticism. And if he picked up the phone and called me and said, "What am I doing wrong? This is the which he hasn't done and won't do.
Hmm.
Here's the lecture I would give him." The last time an attorney general came in under circumstances like this, it was a man named Ed Levy, who Garland spoke about when Biden nominated him. He was the attorney general under Gerald Ford. He's the greatest attorney general of the 20th century.
Hmm.
Most of what we think of as the norms of the modern Justice Department are personal creations of Ed Levy's. He was also the president of the University of Chicago and a very, very great legal scholar. One thing Ed Levy did is he was not a Bill Barr type about going, but he went out and spoke all the time.
Hmm.
And he talked about the norms he was trying to create. He talked about what he was trying to do. He talked about reform of the FBI. He talked about trust in the department. And the speeches of Ed Levy are so important historically that the University of Chicago Press actually published an academic press volume of the speeches of Attorney General Ed Levy.
Hmm.
And, Merrick has done essentially no speaking. And I think that is wrong in every respect. I think if you're trying to build confidence in the apolitical nature of the Justice Department, like Ed Levy, you need to be out there selling that idea, explaining how you're doing things. And, Merrick grew up in a Justice Department culture that was typified by, Janet Reno intoning, "I cannot comment on a pending investigation" in a kind of robotic fashion. And I think that's just totally inadequate for the current environment. I think he should be out giving speeches on major themes like democracy, voting rights, uh, accountability, the norms of the department. And I wish he would be more I wish he would rethink the communications posture of the attorney generalship and look back to what Ed Levy was doing, which he has marked as his model for what he wants to do as a team. I mean, he has said that his goal is to restore the norms that Ed Levy, Griffin Bell, and Ben Civiletti, for whom he was
Hmm.
a special assistant, created in the years after Watergate. One of the elements of that was actually going out and talking about it. And I think he has not done that.
This is so good, Benjamin. Can I give you some gratuitous advice? I think you ought to write that piece. I really think that you ought to write this out, do an essay on this as an invitation to it, because it strikes me as that Merrick Garland has the kind of mind that he's certainly able to do these kinds of essays, speeches, descriptions. He's a very learned, very erudite legal scholar, and as he thinks about his role, I think that the analogy with Ed Levy, might actually be pretty attractive to him. Figuring what is my role, what do I want, what kind of an attorney general. This is the answer to this,
Well, so
and
so we
you know,
know it is attractive to him
yeah,
because when Biden nominated him,
hmm,
so I believe
exactly,
I
yeah,
believe the first person to suggest that Merrick Garland should be Attorney General was me, and
hmm,
I did it in a tweet before the election that saying if Joe Biden's elected, which I thought was I thought he was going to be overwhelmingly elected. So that, shows you my political prognostication ability. But um, his first call should be to Merrick Garland, and he should tell him it's his patriotic duty to come off the bench and
yeah,
be attorney general. He's the only person I can think of who has the potential to be the Ed Levy of our time.
hmm,
And so that was my tweet sometime in October of last year. Um, when Merrick was nominated, he made a speech that said, that talked about Ed Levy. And Lisa Monaco
yeah,
also talked about Levy in her confirmation hearing. And so they're very aware of the Levy era. And by the way, like Ed Levy, Garland is a Chicago person.
Interesting.
And so there's some deep threads going on there. They're missing something important about Ed Levy, which is this book that I'm staring at right now. You know,
This is fascinating.
and they should there's that part of Ed Levy that they should get in touch with.